Hello everybody, welcome back to Cooking 101 in my very tiny kitchen. Happy Memorial Day weekend. A few weeks ago I got a request to make perfect omelets. So I was like, but I don't eat omelets, what am I gonna do? I don't really know how to cook a perfect omelet. So I did what I usually do when I'm not really comfortable with the subject matter. I looked into it a little bit. And then I decided to make a whole show on eggs because there's a lot you can do with eggs. They're very easy to acquire, and usually it's a one-pot meal to cook an egg, and you can make some really awesome stuff with eggs. So I decided to basically go through a couple of different ways in selecting eggs, preparing eggs, what to look for, and then I decided to get really excited based on a suggestion from a friend so it could be inclusive of vegan friends who might be tuning in, and I picked up this stuff, which is vegan eggs. I've never cooked with them before. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm basically going to put them in a pan and make lots of interested sounds while it cooks up, but so we're going to kind of explore all the things you can do with eggs even when you're vegan. So let's start with, what do you pick out in the store? When I'm shopping, I've kind of learned to look for certain things over the years, but it's very complicated when you're shopping for eggs because there is so much labeling on the package now, and a lot of it is nonsense. I did find that there was better flavor with eggs that I looked for that were like super local, or the chickens were really well cared for, and they got outside. I can taste the difference. This is over years of trying eggs and different things. And then once I realized what I liked, I decided to just start buying up packages that seemed like the right kind until I was finding the ones that were perfect. So when I buy eggs, the first thing I look for is the word pasture somewhere in there. Now, I buy a lot of eggs from farmers markets. They don't have all this packaging stuff going on. When you go to a farmer's market, especially around here, the farmers really like to brag about the welfare of their animals, so they'll have photos, or you can ask them. So that makes it a lot easier picking out really high quality eggs. If you're in the store, though, you need certain labeling things. So pasturing is the first thing I look for. And why is that? Chickens that are outside are healthier. They're eating grass, they're eating bugs, there's diversity in their diet, they're exercising, so they're not like just developing a bunch of fat. There's actually been studies that showed that animals that are commercially farmed and are confined all the time are really much fattier in nutrition content than animals that are allowed to wander around for obvious reasons. They're getting more exercise. It's the difference between, say, being cooped up in your apartment during a quarantine or going out for a run every day. So there's that. So I look for pasture on the packaging. Now, you can see this packaging is all over the place. We've got like omega-3s are in here, vitamin D is in here, lutein's in here. If you turn it on its side, no hormones, no antibiotics, vegetarian fed, certified humane. What the hell is going on with this package of eggs? Some of the stuff that they put on eggs is bullshit. So if you're getting organic eggs, yay. That means that the eggs passed a bunch of regulations the government put in place. They're not necessarily going to guarantee that your eggs or your chickens were running around outside. Basically, or to get certified organic, commercial operations have found ways to kind of shortcut around raising the chickens. So instead of them being locked in individual cages, they're now in one giant warehouse. So they're technically roaming, but they're still confined to an indoor space. All organic eggs have to come from chickens that have access, keyword here is have, to the outdoors. This doesn't mean that the chickens get let outside for recess every day. It basically means that warehouses have a small porch area that's fenced in, and the chickens can go through like a doggy door into the porch and go back out. Most chickens don't want to do that because they're kind of freaked out about their surroundings. They're also in really close confines. They might peck at each other, so operations have to do things like blunt their beaks where they cut the tips off. We can go into whether that hurts them or not. I'm not going to get that in depth into it, but they basically are not in a natural environment, and they can still be stressed out. They're not eating bugs. They're not really in the sun unless one wanders onto the porch. So I don't really buy just labeled organic eggs. Another thing that I don't listen to is this one here, which says, let's see, the light is everywhere, vegetarian fed. So chickens are not vegetarians. Chickens are omnivores just like us. Chickens will eat other chickens. If a chicken gets run over by a truck, the other chickens will run into the road to try and peck at it because they are scavengers. So they will basically eat anything. They're supposed to, but like not each other. They're supposed to eat bugs. That's not nice meat. They eat grass. They eat vegetables. They eat fruit. They eat everything. So when I see something is vegetarian fed, I don't even pay attention to it. Some of the ones that mean well when they put vegetarian fed mean that they don't feed them garbage feed. There's a lot of chicken feed for commercial producers that literally takes other animals' scraps and makes it into a meal and feeds it to chickens, and they'll feed chicken meal to cows. Like, there's a lot of cross animal feeding in commercial feeding because they have to use every single part of the animal to make profit. Commercial feedlots and things like that operate on very thin margins, so everything they can sell, they do sell. And that's one of them. They grind up the chicken bedding and chicken everything, feed it to cows, and they'll feed the cows to the chickens. If you guys were alive back when mad cow disease was a thing, it was especially disconcerting because they were grinding up cow extra entrails and things for chicken feed and sheep feed, and so there was cross-contamination going on there. Then they were really worried that mad cow would get into other animals, and we were all screwed with our food supply, so that was fun. So commercial operations do not have vegetarian feed, and I think a lot of commercial pastured egg operations now say vegetarian feed just to ensure people that they are not feeding the chickens other animals. That being said, I still kind of ignore when something is marked as vegetarian fed because it doesn't really mean anything. I want my chickens to be outside, and to be outside they need to be eating bugs and things like that. So they're not going to be vegetarians. So you can take or leave that label. I kind of just ignore it. No hormones. That means chickens, to gain a profit, you have to really speed their growth up. That's true of any animal. Right now, they're trying to slow the growth of animals because they can't process enough of them right now, and farmers are stuck with these like really gigantic animals that they have to either put down. Now I've been reading that they're trying to put them on diets so they grow a little bit slower and they don't have to put their stock down. But when it says no hormones, it means that the chickens laying these eggs are not receiving hormones to produce more eggs faster or grow faster. So that's a good thing. No antibiotics. You can take or leave that. I think that to be kind to your animals, you don't want them to fester with an infection. And for that, you should be taking them off the supply line, treating them, and then when they're better, you can collect their eggs again. That would be the most humane thing, in my opinion. I don't know if no antibiotics means that they just let the animal suffer or they do that. There are cases, and the only reason I bring this up, of animals where they just let them have an infection. This happens with cows a lot who produce milk. The udder gets mastitis, which is a thing that moms can get, human moms, where their udder gets very swollen and painful, and they won't treat the cow because they're trying to, again, this is a commercial operation for organic farming, squeeze out as much milk as possible. So there are cases of that happening where they don't treat the animal with anything to keep it antibiotic free. So I'm always skeptical of that label too. And that leads me to the interesting one, which is certified humane. Certified humane. There we go. I can talk words today. Certified humane is a new certification that they came out with after organic farming took off, and they found all the shortcuts to make it basically not organic farming, but with little exceptions. Certified Humane is an independent of the government board that can certify it. It judges on how the animals are raised. They have their own boxes you have to tick, independent of organic farming. And they're usually a little more trustworthy with animal welfare. Organic farming isn't necessarily concerned with animal welfare because they're more, is there chemicals, is there pesticides, is there hormones? That's not animal welfare. That's just, are there chemicals that we don't want in the food? And Certified Humane takes more of an interest in the welfare of the animal. So I do pay attention to that. I am interested in farms that do that. So that's one that you can definitely look for. Because this is pasture raised, this indicates that the birds are probably brought out into a field. A lot of bigger operations that pasture raise actually make mobile coops that a tractor drags along the pasture and can relocate the chickens to new grass, new bugs. Really good system that should be in place, in my opinion, for everyone, but not everyone can afford to implement that, so who knows. Now, as to all this stuff at the top here, this stuff, omega-3s, vitamin D, lutein. So, a couple years ago, people got they really caught on to the fact that people want these beautiful orange yolked eggs. Now, these are the types of eggs that you could already get in Europe because Europe doesn't really factory farm the way America does. And people were finding that you could get omega-3 fatty acids from pastured eggs. You could get a source of vitamin D from pastured eggs. All good stuff. So, again, the organic industry likes to cut corners. What they started doing was giving them reinforced feed. So feed that already had like fish oil supplements in it and vitamin D supplements. And that way they could kind of cut the corner of having those chickens get those things naturally outside. So when a box openly displays those nutrients, I'm always kind of skeptical just because we don't know how that chicken got that stuff in their egg. Was it because it's been treated well and is wandering outside all the time, or is it because they're getting enriched feed and they just kind of hang out in a shed? Those are questions you always have to kind of ask with the commercial producers. So, my husband picked these up. I've actually kind of taught him what to look for, and this is not to pick on his choice. I'm actually glad he got a box with all this labeling. That way I could show it to you guys because it's very complicated and confusing. And they really try to grab you with these words because they want to sell. There are certain companies that do a really good job. What they do is they source from small farms where the chickens, it's easier when you're a small farm to raise chickens outside because you're not herding 6,000 chickens with a tractor out in a field. That's difficult, obviously. But they source from small farms and they kind of centralize the production. They gather all the eggs, but all the farms kind of agree to raise them in the same way where they're outside and they get good stuff. So that could be the case with this. This is Saunders eggs, and I don't know what they do, whether they do a big sourced operation or not. They could. Usually there's something that explains it in the packaging. I'm not going to read the packaging in front of you right now. I tend to get Nellie's eggs. Nellie's are really good at sourcing from small farms. There's another company, I can't remember who they are, but just look at your packaging. You might be able to decipher what's going on with it. The ones that source from small farms these days love to show that off. That is a very valuable thing. So you should be able to find something somewhere that says what's going on with these chickens. So you can see how they live and where they come from and things like that. It's very big these days in food trends to show off these sources. So the good news is it shouldn't be too much of a mystery. So that's buying eggs. Brown eggs, white eggs, there's no difference in nutrients whatsoever. Big ones, small ones, there's for a jumbo egg, there's 1 gram of protein extra than an average medium-sized egg. But that's it. There's no other health differences in eggs. All right, I'm just going to start this. Got to get my water boiling. So, are eggs good for you? That is kind of a $1 million question. Eggs in the media have gone back and forth a lot over the years. There's even a joke about it on The Simpsons. Basically, they have a bad rap because they have a natural source of cholesterol. People who have had high cholesterol have been very wary of it. People who want to avoid high cholesterol don't want to raise it by eating too many eggs. So a golden question I get from a lot of people I work with is, how many eggs can I eat in a day? How many eggs can I eat in a week? My answer is, if you're not struggling with cholesterol, you can have 2 eggs a day if you really, really want. Eggs have a lot of important nutrients, and only people who have major cholesterol problems where every bit of cholesterol in their diet is going to count should be really worried about whether eggs will raise their cholesterol. Everyone else, this is if you don't have a history of bad cholesterol, enjoy your eggs. They're not going to push you over the edge, and there's a lot of good stuff in them. Like I said, pasture-raised eggs have omega-3 fatty acids in them naturally, and they are a very rare source of vitamin D. We do not get a lot of vitamin D in our diet. Most of our vitamin D comes from our skin when we're sitting in the sun, which is a little hard because you also can get sunburns and skin cancer from sitting in the sun, so we don't do that very much. So it's hard to get vitamin D into our bodies. Eggs are, if they are properly raised chickens, a rare source of vitamin D. So they are worth, just for that, eating. They are also a very rare source of choline, which is an essential nutrient in our diet. Lutein as well, which is plastered all over this box, comes from eggs. All this stuff can be natural. It just matters how the chicken was raised. So that's why it matters when you're checking the box, trying to decipher what's going on with these chickens. So I'm going to go over a couple ways to cook really good eggs that are foolproof. The first thing I'm going to show is hard-boiled eggs. I had a problem for years where all my hard-boiled eggs were just sticking to the shell and driving me crazy. And then New York Times Cooking came along with foolproof hard-boiled eggs, and it has changed my life forever, so I'm now passing this on to you. What they propose is that you steam them rather than straight up boil them. I don't know why. I've studied food science. They never went over why eggs stick to the shells when you boil them. It's just something that's fascinating to me. So what you do is you put about 1 inch of water in a pan and you bring it to a boil. So my water's boiling now. And then you lower your eggs into the pan. I'm going to do 3 because that's about as much as I use for my egg salad. Gently, don't smash them in there. Just drop them in. You can see there's not that much water in there, but there is a good steam going on. You cover them back up. You've got kind of a rapid boil going on, so I'm going to lower the heat slightly so that the water doesn't boil off completely, and I'm going to set my timer for 11 minutes exactly. So I'm going to let these steam for 11 minutes. If you like kind of liquid gold centers to your eggs or a soft boil, put them in there for about 7-8 minutes. For completely hard boiled, 11 minutes. Then you just let it go. I set my timer. I will take it off the heat when it's done, and then you can run it under some cold water, crack them open. I will show you the magic of that. In the meantime, I'm going to show you a method that is good for both scrambled eggs and an omelet. I'm going to make scrambled eggs just because that's my personal preference, but you can use this and I will tell you how to apply it to omelet as well. So first things first that I recommend, bring your eggs to room temperature if you can. These have been sitting out for a bit, so they are more room temperature than they are refrigerator temperature. In Europe, they don't refrigerate their eggs. That is because they don't process their eggs the same way as we do. What we do is we scrub our eggs. That's to remove any kind of membrane, because eggs come out with a little bit of a membrane on them. as well as dirt, blood, chicken poop, feathers. That stuff all gets stuck to it. It's pretty gross. I think in Europe they do wash them. They don't just sell you a disgusting looking egg. I bought them in Europe. They're beautiful. And you can't even really tell that there's a membrane on them, so I don't even know why the US does this. But our scrubbing process creates porous surfaces on the shell, and then any kind of salmonella or contaminants that might have been on the shell can slip through the shell into the egg. That's why we don't consume raw eggs in this country, or if you do, it's with a huge warning sign. In Europe, they don't worry so much about that, and because they don't scrub it or create this porous shell, they don't refrigerate their eggs at all. And this creates much more superior egg dishes, in my opinion. Not cooking with cold eggs is like a Julia Child staple. It just molecularly makes the egg perform a lot better. So when you bring it to room temperature, it's not going to go bad right away. Eggs are pretty resilient, unless they have bacteria that slipped inside the egg and already it's probably going bad anyway. But if you just leave the egg at room temperature while you're cooking with it, you'll get a better egg dish out of it. Same thing with baking too. You want room temperature egg when you're baking. So, I have a pretty small pan to work with. One of the key things to making perfect omelet is you need a lot of space. That way you can make a very, very nice thin egg. So I'm going to start with just one egg for this dish. Crack it on a hard surface. Usually a corner of a counter is perfect. You want to get something you can wedge your finger into. And you just crack that egg open. I always check a little bit, make sure there's no shell. I just accidentally dropped a whole bunch of shell in there. Use the shell to pick up the shell. That was a tip that I got from the lovely ladies in Europe that were professional chefs that I cooked with, Rachel and Becky, if you're watching, hello. The shell just brings the shell out much more easily than when you're digging around in your finger, and then you don't get raw egg on your finger. Next thing I do is a little seasoning. So this is one of the few times that I add salt. 2 turns of the salt shaker for me. That's what I prefer. If you're a pepper person, a little fresh ground pepper, also great. Now, my secret ingredient to perfect scrambled eggs is get yourself some herbs. This is thyme. I have talked before about my obsessions with thyme. Thyme looks like this. It's awesome. It's easy to grow if you want to grow it on a windowsill or a garden. It tastes great on everything, and especially chicken and eggs. It's just meant for chicken and eggs. If you guys were here, I would be passing around the thyme sprigs because it smells so good. And it's just this lovely, savory, aromatic awesomeness. I also happened to have a little bit of tarragon, so I'm adding that. You can add any fresh herbs that you want to eggs. Fresh herbs rock. I've talked about this before. Flavor enhancing, rely on herbs, not a metric ton of salt. This is what tarragon looks like. It's very scraggly. Also pretty good, well-known poultry spice. So I added my fresh thyme, and I added my fresh tarragon, a little salt and pepper. Now you gotta get a nice uniform texture. So you don't need any crazy whisk for this. A fork, I find, is probably the most efficient way to whip up an egg. Get a little bit of air into it. You don't need a ton. We're not making meringue here. You don't have to put a metric ton of air bubbles in. But what I'm looking for is a nice, consistently yellow, pretty smooth texture to the egg, where the yolk is completely combined with the white. And then I do a little bit vigorous kind of whipping. That's just to get some air bubbles in. Air bubbles are fun with eggs because they make them light and fluffy. Alan is making Doctor Who jokes as I'm doing this, which is very amusing because he is a Time Lord. So we're doing nerdy puns on this egg episode. Okay, so it's a little hard to see because it's hard to tilt a liquid, But there's little air bubbles all over this thing right now. So I've gotten a little bit of light air into the eggs. And now I know it's going to be light and fluffy when I cook it. First things first. Whether you are using... I just got hit with the steam. Whether you are using a nonstick pan or not, I recommend adding a little bit of a fat to what you're cooking. That's because even with a non-stick or cast iron surface, there are pores in the surface that eggs can get into and stick to. They're really good at that. So I've used a cast iron skillet a lot for eggs. I'm loving it right now because I can cook whatever I want without any fat whatsoever. But the eggs sometimes get left behind, and I don't like wasting good eggs. The fat I'm using, olive oil. I always use olive oil. I use junky olive oil because the good stuff is no good for cooking. But just some regular olive oil from the grocery store. I do not put a lot in. You don't want this stuff sitting in a pool of oil. So just a little dollop here. It'll spread out. If you use a metric ton, I've had like olive oil soup gathering around the egg and it splatters everywhere. Now, here is the cardinal rule of cooking omelets and scrambled eggs and sunny side up eggs and eggs over easy, like any type of egg in a pan. Your heat has to be low. And I'm actually going to check this to make sure it's as low as possible. Cooking perfect eggs, perfect omelets, perfect scrambled eggs is a lesson in patience. You can't rush this stuff. It comes out crazy. If you cook a sunny side up egg over high heat, it starts to really like rupture and bubble into a crazy shape. It also will burn around the edges. If you are rushing an omelet, it's going to come out uneven in texture and it's going to be half cooked. To get a full cook in an egg, you just have to really be patient and not bother it while it's cooking over the heat. So let's see, I'm spreading this olive oil around, make sure it's coating the surface. Alright. Yeah, I used so little, so now I gotta get it all over the pan. But it does spread out a lot, and this ensures that I'm not gonna be stuck with olive oil soup when I put my egg in here. I'm trying to get the entire base of the pan because I'm using the scrambled egg method, which is also the omelet method, which means the egg is going to run all over this surface. I don't want it to stick to any part of it. So really, really coating this entire pan with a small amount of olive oil is the key here. Come on. You can also use a brush, which it just occurred to me to do, if you have one. I have a nice silicone one here. So you can spread that olive oil out with the brush, and then you don't have to worry about missing any part of the surface. You can also do this with butter, by the way. I'm just not using butter because I don't use butter. It also has more calories and saturated fat. So just things to keep in mind. So I'm going to use a wooden spatula. You don't have to. You can use a plastic one as well. Just not metal. You don't want to scratch the surface of the pan. So you're just going to pour out your egg in a nice wide base here. Alright, I'm going to get this out of the way. So, when you're cooking an omelet, you start to create a base by swirling it around the pan like this. Now you can wait a few seconds so that it starts to form what's called a curd, which is the solidified part of the egg. Once it forms a curd, then you do this swirling method, and it thins out everything, so you're not concentrating the omelet in the middle of the pan. It's going all over the pan. This is so low that it's going to take a minute. See, I'm already being impatient. Don't be impatient with eggs. They take a lot of patience to make perfect stuff. Now, if you're not doing an omelet, if you're doing what I'm doing, which is making awesome scrambled eggs, what you can start doing is like stir the egg around a little bit with your spatula. Alright, that's telling me that my eggs are done. Ooh, one of them exploded and the water all ran out, so I wasn't paying attention. Too much steam came out. I swear though, the other eggs are gonna be awesome. So I'm gonna run a little bit of cold water over this just to make sure that they don't overcook. And so I can handle them as well. But back to this. So I let it sit for a bit. Now I can stir it. Now these beautiful curds are forming. It's lovely. It's what you want in eggs. Doing two things at once. All right. Here's my hard-boiled egg. It may have been sitting in no water for a little bit, which can be bad, can be good. Bad stuff goes wrong all the time when you're cooking. That's okay. It's part of cooking. You learn from your mistakes. So I'm stirring my eggs to kind of create the scrambled egg curd so that nothing sticks to itself and becomes one flat edge. But it's just a gentle stir over low heat. I'm not boiling these eggs to death. I'm not trying to get them to simmer like a pot of water. I want them to slowly cook. Alright, I'm just going to adjust the heat slightly. Also, cooking with a small pan means that this stuff heats up a lot faster. So having low heat to start, really good. You can adjust up slightly if it's going a little too slow. Level of doneness is up to you. I'm one of those people who, if my scrambled eggs look even a little bit wet, I reject them outright. Gross. I like really dry scrambled egg curds. To you, that might be disgusting too. This is about what you like. I am not the boss of you. Alright. Do. So I'm just gathering the scrambled egg around. You can see, even with a little bit of fat in the bottom, it still kind of sticks. That's okay. You can actually salvage a lot of what's sticking to the pan by just continuously moving your spatula over what you're working with. No egg left behind here. It's also going to stick to the pan a little bit. I'm going to just scrape that back into the pan. Off the spatula. There we go. Lots of good egg curd is trying to get away here. Alright, so like I said, nice dry curds for me. That's the scrambled eggs in my dreams, is dry scrambled eggs. Well cooked. Scrape it one more time. Make sure every bit is cooked. Alright. Here's my scrambled eggs. They're perfect. I know they are. I'm just gonna grab a plate. Pardon my arm, everybody. Okay. And then you can just slide it out on the plate. It's good to go. It smells very herby, especially that tarragon is coming out. All good stuff. Smells good, it's gonna taste good, everything is awesome. Okay, so there's my scrambled eggs. They're perfect, they're awesome. If you were doing an omelet, what you would do is after it gets nice and spread out, you would basically walk away from it for 10 seconds. That's the secret. You let it sit. You let it cook very slowly. It's not going to go anywhere. You just have to make sure that you're not sitting there poking at it. It'll start to firm up, and then you can start to pry the edges away. Different than what I was doing with the scrambled eggs. It's a very gradual, like, pushing away at the sides to kind of pry the edges up. They come up naturally because they're the thinnest part. As you're prying it up, the egg will start to come up, and you will know when it's done. You don't have to flip it over. Because you thinned it out by swirling it around, it should be cooked all the way through. Then you can just fold it over 1/3 like an envelope or a piece of paper going in an envelope, slide it onto a plate and use the edge of the pan to flip the other third over. That is a perfect omelet. If you like to have an omelet with stuff in it, adding stuff is going to change the entire cooking composition. It's really hard to make an omelet come out texture-wise perfect when it is filled with meat and cheese and vegetables and all that stuff. So what I recommend to people is cook your filling separately, put it in the middle, and wrap the egg around it. That way the egg integrity is kept and you don't have to worry about how it changes the cooking. So I'm going to try my eggs, because you always try what you cook. Good stuff. Ooh, I got a little pepper. Excuse me. Hooray for live television. Technical difficulties. All right. Okay. We're back in business. Sorry about that, guys. So here's my hard-boiled egg. That's perfect. I'm going to cool it off. It's still a little hot. Pepper is in the back of my throat to stay. It is awesome. All right, let's check out how well this peels. So when I'm peeling a hard-boiled egg, I look for where there's an air bubble, because that's the easiest place to crack an egg. It's usually at the bottom of the egg, by the way, is where that air bubble is, and I will crack it on the air bubble. I apologize, guys, for all the coughing. It's one of the dangers of doing a live show. Anyway, I'm peeling this off screen like a dummy because I'm showing off how easily this peels, but as you can see, the egg is nice and moist inside. It is not sticking to any part. I can just pull this shell right off. No egg white left in the shell whatsoever. It's amazing how easy that is. So steam your eggs, folks. All right, now we're getting to the science part as I continue to choke. Ooh, the show must go on, everybody. So I'm just washing out everything I used. Try not to cross-contaminate if I can help it. Alright. So we're washing our pans to prepare for the vegan egg preparation and see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I've never done this before. Alright, clean pan. Clean spatula. There we go. So, I went to the store and I picked up Just Egg. I've used the Just brand before, but with their mayo. I love Just mayo. And I still have pepper in my throat. This is awesome. Awesome. Alright. I've used Just mayo before. I hate mayo in general, so the fact that I liked Just mayo made me a convert to vegan mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is traditionally made with eggs, so I figure Just Egg, probably also good. These people know what they're doing. I also ran it by a friend of mine who's vegan. She says she loves Just Egg. So the container looks like it's mustard. It's basically the consistency of that step I got to where I whipped the egg until there was lots of air bubbles in it, but the yolk was combined thoroughly with the white. And I swear I can open this. This is just an adventure in live television today, folks, let me tell you. I could have pre-prepped this, but why? I'm gonna just stab it. Alright. Never a dull moment. Whether I am coughing to death or incapable of opening a container. There we go. Alright, so my Just Egg is open. And I didn't spill it everywhere. Huzzah. Just Egg is made from primary ingredient, mung beans. They don't use soy in their thing, so it's actually pretty great. They are a vegan company that does not make soy-based foods. As you can see, looks kind of like egg, looks kind of like batter. I'm gonna add some more of my herbs to this. Same kind of preparation. You add whatever you would add to your eggs when you use this stuff. It doesn't come pre-salted or pre-seasoned in any way, so they treat it just like a container of liquid eggs. You can, by the way, buy containers of liquid eggs, but you don't get to have all of the fun preferences that you do by buying your eggs not liquefied. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. I'm not going to add pepper because I just choked for like 5 minutes on pepper on screen, and I don't want that to happen again. All right. So I'm going to take my fork. I'm going to do a quick stir just to make sure everything is incorporated. Obviously, I'm not going to worry about getting air bubbles into this because it's not the same molecular structure as an egg. But I am going to at least stir it up with my fork just to make sure everything, the salt and the herbs are incorporated into the egg. I'm going to add a little fat to my pan. All right. I'm going to lower the heat to about the same temperature I cooked my eggs. There are no real instructions on how to cook just eggs, so I'm winging it. We're going to see what happens. Let's see, yeah. It says cook like a scrambled egg. Very thorough instructions. But we're going to see how this mimics the cooking process of what I just did. I'm very curious as to see what happens. So again, I'm getting the olive oil all around the pan. There we go. Gonna add my vegan eggs. There we go. Alright, so far, exactly the same process. I'm gonna start stirring. See what happens when I stir. I have no idea what's gonna happen. Alright. Kind of looks like pancake batter, which isn't odd. I'm sure that it's got like bean protein in here, some kind of thickener. I'm just curious how it's going to cook up. But vegan friends of mine who I work with love this stuff. They make omelets, they make scrambles. It does everything an other egg will do. Same texture. Has protein because it's made from mung beans. I think I'm just going to keep choking on this pepper forever, so yay me. I apologize again, guys. Alright, so far, it's not coming together as quickly as the eggs will, but something's happening here. It looks like it's getting a little thick. I'm going to turn the heat up slightly, because... Oh, no, we're starting to get a curd. It's happening. Scientific experiment is working. It really is coming together just like scrambled eggs. It's very interesting what's happening here. I like it already. It looks like exactly what a scrambled egg would look like as it's being created. I actually turned the heat up a little too high. It's on me. Remember, patience is important, whether you're using fake eggs or real. But it is absolutely coming together just like a chicken egg would. Fascinating stuff here, guys. All for science. Alright. So our vegan scrambled egg is really mimicking an actual scrambled egg. Veganism has really come a long way, these guys, and I like to joke that we have the technology and we can make this stuff happen now. So if you are thinking of going vegan, there's a lot less stuff that you can really have to worry about giving up. You can have scrambled eggs. You can have provolone cheese. It's not all soy-based anymore. A lot of it's based on real foods and not a bunch of words you can't pronounce. This stuff has about the same amount of protein because it's bean-based, which is awesome. So I'm going to try and do the same kind of dry curd that I did on my regular scrambled eggs. I'm just going to move those eggs over. See, because to me, it looks still like kind of a moist curd, and you know how I feel about that. I'm not into it. I like almost a browned Maillard reaction type finish on my scrambled eggs. I'm not about that liquid egg life. So it looks like the egg that gets left around in the vegan egg here that gets left in the pan, it browns slightly. It's a little harder to get that browning happening on the rest of this. And I don't want to push this too far. It is sticking to the pan quite a bit. Well, remove it from heat. There's the vegan scrambled eggs. Pretty impressive. Now granted, my first batch has more herb in it than the vegan batch. Get another fork here. Just get it off here. Okay, there are my two types of scrambled eggs side by side. This obviously has more herbs, but this is chicken egg, this is vegan egg. Pretty impressive. I'm impressed. This was a fun experiment for me because I've never done this before. And I'm just going to give it a little try. Okay, texture is a little lighter than a chicken egg, a little less dense. So, now I know. Very much like an egg though. It's just an egg that you've put a lot of air into, more or less. So, thank you guys for joining me. That's how you can prepare your eggs in different super easy ways. I now have a bunch of eggs that I can eat for the rest of the day. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any suggestions for Cooking 101, please lay them on me. I use them. I may not use them the minute you suggest them, but I definitely keep them in mind when I'm creating my show. If you would like to contribute in any way to the show, I do take donations at my Venmo, which is at JSRockRD. Basically, the show is free for anybody who needs it because right now we're all a little financially stressed. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. This show is for you. If you can afford to give something, all that money just helps me buy groceries and keeps the show going. So thank you for tuning in. Have a great Memorial Day tomorrow, and I'll see you next week.